a really good presentation, and I think, you know, right from the outset it's been quite a novel approach to where a building might be, and I really enjoyed actually just your process of actually investigating it, sort of teasing it out. And I know it's been far more explicitly informed, and it's kind of come back in some ways, something which could sort of happen without potentially much cost. I'm guessing the reason that the structure or the ties, these rather big columns, are exposed is because the bit in the middle can be replaced or something. But that may not be the case. Why is the structure left exposed?
On the outside.
Yeah.
Well, it really came from looking at how things sort of hang off other things. So the main thing was such as like water drops that's hanging off like a leaf off a branch or something. There's a kind of a cradling effect from that.
Yeah, cocoons hang off leaves, and you know, in a way that's more hugging.
Yeah.
Isn't it? I just think that there's a bit of capacity there too to sort of maybe take that natural analogy, you know, which doesn't make much change really potentially. It's why I said maybe if the structure's left exposed, it allows more freedom for the functioning bit in the middle to be sort of pulled apart and taken away and kind of adapted, and it's obviously right for own. It's really inventive. I mean, it's only a bow wow for narcissists taking out. A lot of these things go down to the ground as well, and that's something that could be explored with just one look.
It's a good effort, isn't it? I mean, I followed it right from the beginning with you, then I had to do 5 months out from the middle. So it's good to see you get to this stage. It's very simple now. And you could argue about the structure that holds it, like could be more web-like and diagonal to give it the bracing and all of that. And remember in the early stages we talked about wedges between them which could have housed it. But I mean, I think this is ultimately a much more realisable and straightforward solution. And I think you've handled the lifts and the accreting around the great legs of the structure in a really, really good way. And I think that young kids would really enjoy those spaces up there over the top of everybody and being really allowed to have a go, and the ruggedness underneath the expressway.
The booming.
Yeah, it's a good scheme. You should take it to whoever the powers that are that be and say, look, you know, there's possibilities for this. There could be a leg in for you for where you're going to go after you finish here. I think it's ultimately realisable. Very good.
Yes, I agree with both Sam and Rick, but your aim has been likeness, and I do wonder if you had followed the idea more of the cradle cocoon or something, whether you could have had less in them, even meshed it so that you don't need railings, thin meshing, so that you could do all sorts of things in there and still not fall out. And be veiled. And then really there's things that can come down from the meshed ceiling that can, so to make them something much flimsier, and perhaps you do fewer things, you know, curtains and things, because I don't think you have much, I guess wind would be your biggest issue.
The model was that, doesn't it, and the drawing.
Yeah, I think if you took your idea of fineness and thinness to an extreme, that would have been an interesting thing to say. If I did forget the skate park, because there's heaps of those around, but there's not a lot of these cradles, and then to just said I'm a spider, what would I make? You know, that kind of thinking, and then see how minimal you could make it and still be a fun space for kids to do things in. And then maybe even have drop-down stairs that you can pull up like fire escapes, you know, and really not pare it back, but change the sensation of the thing that you're making, you know. idea to go underground with a comic?
Oh, you know.
Oh, yes. That was 2 years
Another
ago.
park, was it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
That was amazing, wasn't it? Further up, wasn't it?
From very underutilised areas, you know, and they are routes, they're big routes.
Yeah.
And I really commend you for thinking about that and thinking about how to use it. I mean, homeless street people would be another thing, you know, like the fellas that are sitting, as we talked about further down the way there, and their wonderful living rooms, yeah. There are a few things. The first thing is, I think, because it is such a big roof, I'm wondering whether the building couldn't have been big as well, like long. You know, I'm just wondering whether it couldn't have been a singular long rather than multiple buildings. I'm just thinking, you know, I'm thinking aloud. I'm complimenting you first, and then thinking second. You know? And then the other thing I'd say is, how do those columns or ties on the outside of the building work structurally? How do they work?
How do they work? They're tied into the trusses below.
Yeah, but how are they tied into the concrete above?
I was talking to the engineer about that, and sort of the first instinct that I had was to use bearing pads, but essentially they work in compression rather than in tension. The other idea was just to sort of bolt them in.
Yeah, I'm not sure that all of them would work.
Yeah.
So
But you'd want a hug, wouldn't you? You'd want to do that. Hook on like
I
that.
think your suspension technique would be the next area of review, because I think what you could do is you could actually develop a system that sits under the bridge, or sits under the expressways, that you then occupy, you know, gradually, rather than just a singular system that is a building. It's a big long general system that gradually gets filled in, and its structure in itself, the filling in the system, you know, in secondary structure, if you like. And then the other thing I'd say is I think the connection from the ground to the building is a really important connection, because on one hand it's convenience and invitation, on the other hand it's security and isolation. So I'd be making really careful judgment decisions about that. Like, is it, for instance, a beautiful ramp that just unfolds on a slight incline up to these buildings so it can be used by multiple people? Is it this sort of isolated, privatised thing that you just go up and you go out and you feel a little bit isolated as a performer? You know? So I think the connection is another thing that I continue to work on in terms of like its expression in the park and its power as a visual, you know, like its power as an element of connection. But you know, my first one there was great ground plane. I think you've really worked the ground plane quite cleverly, you know, and at first you look at it and think no building, but there's all these things going on, and quite nicely done. So in principle, I think you've really thought it through and provided, you know, the council with some additional building space that's very, very viable. And I agree with Rick. I'd take it to Clover Moore and say, well, there's a whole project under here. There's a school, you know, there's accommodation for street people. Something they do in Denmark is they provide places for street people, beer drinkers and so forth, which are very important places, you know, and it's the interaction between the public and the street people which becomes really important. It improves everyone's life and understanding. The girl that did it took me there once and I was scared to walk in the gate, but once inside, I was fine. Very interesting.
Remember the barbecue place in Johannesburg?
Oh, yeah.
Under the expressway. Whoa, that was a pretty full-on joint too.
Andrew, you could.
Yeah, just compliment, you know, fantastic work ethic. You've got really good. It's a great project. Is completely agree. Like what a tough context. Like the size and scale of that IMAX, the spread distance of the expressways. Just to add, agree with all, but to add more minor points that just haven't been brought up yet. great section. Like I love those MRI scans that are delicately changing section. Like you can't understand that area without having the 5 or 6 plan cuts that you've done, even though only 2.5 you might be building, and those kind of 6 or 7 changing sections, so you really understand exactly what's going on with the context. And to echo what Peter said as well, I think it's a fantastic ground plan. We've worked on that a lot. And similarly to, it's an open expanse. The first time you build big open plan kind of houses, when you really need to learn about furniture, because if you take away all visions, you've still got to divide up sort of bodies in other more nuanced ways. So I think you furnished that kind of area like really well. It suits the program and the connections with what's there. So wish you all the best, and definitely take it to the council.
Well done, Chris. Thank you.